Yes.
All right. Hi, my name is Don Gilbert. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I spent 3 years serving in Japan, and then later I spent 3 years serving in Thailand. And in each case, I learned the language. That was important because you can't talk to people unless you know their language, and it kind of sends the wrong message no matter what your job is if you're not trying to learn the language. And I feel that the act of learning kind of connects you to people. And in fact, even if you can't speak very well at all, if you're trying, everybody is on your side. And if you're just being a foreigner and not really learning, they're not on your side because everybody does that, and people hate that. You know, you would hate that in your own country too. So it's hard to learn a new language. It takes a lot of time to learn a new language, and it's a never-ending process. So the first thing you have to do is get your mind straight about that you are going to do it. You're going to be a lifelong learner and keep notes and stuff like that. But for me, the key was learning what you need and using what you learn. So my method of learning is, if you have a class, that's fine, but it's better if you have a private instructor. So both times when I learned a language, I took my lesson from 7 in the morning until 8 in the morning. Every day you meet with your language instructor. And what I did was, of course, at first they have to teach you grammar and pronunciation and stuff like that. But I kept a log every day of things that I wanted to say, and I tried all day, every day, to speak in the language with people. You know, on the telephone and the store, on the bus and the restaurant, everything that you have to do, even where is the bathroom, you try to speak the language, and then you make notes on what you. There's another way to do this where you attend a class and the instructor has a little agenda, and I hate this, and they make you go through stuff and they teach you stuff that maybe you need or you don't need. But if it's not what you're going to practice that day, you're not going to learn it as fast. So my method is, okay, let them do whatever they want, but then the rest of the lesson you spend asking, how do you say this? How do you say that? And then practicing it. And then all during the day, you practice that with people. You know, I always record my lessons and listen to them at night. After a while, that was too much work. But for getting pronunciation right, it's really good to record what you're doing. And then I come in and I say, how do you say, I live across from Kulapunt 9? And they tell you. And then, what is my address? How many times when I go walking in the morning exercising, I listen to the tape. Ban Lek T Sang Roy Hasep Jet Tap Nung. You know, Tanon Chiang Mai Hod. That was my address, something like that. But the pronunciation, you know, is important too. So I listened and I practiced, and I listened and I practiced. But by bringing in questions, you're more motivated, and by getting people to tell you how to say that, and then you go out and you practice it. So they keep on telling you, like, there's weird constructs of grammar and how do you put things together and how do you use negative and passive and whatever. Well, fine, you got to let the instructor take you through all that in a structured way. But for every day, I get much more gratification from learning to say things that I need to say, and let them take me through the more complicated things. And now, here's the biggest problem. You need to take notes and write down what you are learning. Mm-hmm. And twice I've done this wrong. And after the first time in Japanese, I vowed never to write down notes using Roman letters. It's just pointless. It is pointless to do that. And yet when I came here, my company said, I'm sorry, we have our way and you must do our way. And that way was the first year you write things down with funny little letters like PUM. It has a little E and everything. And it's like, well, now you're learning a language that you'll never use. And so I never learned to write Thai because after 1 year, my lessons were cut off. And then I kept on learning, but at my own pace. I didn't have an instructor anymore. I just kept asking people around me, how do you say this and how do you say that? So I highly recommend, no matter what they say, the first thing that you do is learn to write the language and pronounce the language properly. That is key. If you can't write it, you can't take notes. And even though that will slow you down in learning what you're learning, mm-hmm. and saying things to people, it doesn't matter because that's what you learn. That's what you need long term. If you're not going to say the language with an improper accent, like well, there's little markings to show the tones in Thai, and in Japanese there's no tone, so it's not that way. But still, you can't get the pronunciation right unless you write it. So that's one thing I would recommend for anybody, is to learn to write the language as you're learning it. And probably nobody else will agree with me. And then the second thing is, learn phrases that you're going to use every day. Learn how to say hello, how are you, thank you, please, how to order food and stuff like that. But learn it with the right pronunciation. But try to write it in the actual language that you're doing. And what that means is, at the first, there's going to be this period where you're memorizing the alphabet. In Japanese, there's 2 alphabets of 50 characters each. Well, that took a long time, man. Every bus ride, I had my flashcards. Always make flashcards of everything, so that when you have any extra time, you go through your flashcards and you try it and try it, any extra time whatsoever. And so, yes, for the first 2 or 3 years that you're there, you are writing a lot of notes and you're spending a lot of time practicing, and that's just what it takes. But then after a while, it becomes self-gratifying. You can talk to people and you have conversations and they can understand you. And again, my method is, well, if there's words I don't know, too bad. When I'm talking, I can control the conversation, right? I still can't understand TV because who knows what words they're saying. But the words I know well, and I can use them. And so I prefer to get good at the things that you know and then keep adding things that you know instead of trying to bite off more than you can chew. Mm-hmm. So I guess my recommendation for learning language is, first, have a good attitude. Every day you're going to be learning new things, and it's going to help you in your ministry because it enables you to have a relationship with somebody. Without that, you don't have relationships with people. In fact, the act of learning the language and asking somebody, how do you say this, is cool. They become your friend once you start asking them how to do it. Whether it's a shopkeeper near you or somebody that you see regularly, keep asking them about language. And pretty soon you can ask them about anything, right? More items of conversation come up. So, knowing the language a little and having a good attitude is a good step toward ministry. Having a cute pet or a cute child is the other ways toward ministry. If you have any of those 3, you can make relationships with people very easily. If you don't do that, if you just come up to somebody and start talking about some weird subject, you won't become their friend. But with the 3 ways I mentioned, it's good. So, and then write in the language to take your notes. And then always practice what you learn every day. Don't just write it down and practice it in private. No. Go ahead and practice it with your friends and ask them new things. And always keep your notes, your notebook handy so you can write down new things. And then the next day, it's not a question that you have, but you tell your teacher, oh, I learned how to say this. Is that the right way to pronounce it? Is that the right way to use it? In what context do you use it? When you have that conversation, then you really understand it. And then you let them teach you whatever they're going to teach you. So that's what I've learned, having learned 2 languages now.
Very good. Thank you. I have one follow-up question.
Okay.
You talked about your organization, and they're like, you have to use the Roman system, the Pasa Karaoke.
Right.
And then you also, I kind of sense that maybe the teacher they chose or that you worked with wasn't always your ideal.
No, my teachers were always pretty good.
Okay.
It's just that I resented them since I've learned one language and I knew exactly what I did wrong, because in Japanese I went for a year and a half writing it in Roman letters, and once I learned the everything opened up as soon as I learned to write it.
Yeah.
I insisted on that and they said no. And then the teacher just followed what they said.
So one of the things that I see is that sometimes our co-missionaries, our fellow laborers, our organizational structure, expectations, sometimes that can work against actually learning the language. We spend so much time in relationship with our fellow missionaries or their expectations about ministry that kind of are in conflict with really focused emphasis on language learning. And I'm wondering how you navigated that organizational expectations.
Well, you can't change the organization. I tried really hard to change the organizational expectations, and they wouldn't budge at all. Missionary organizations seem to be very conservative. So, too bad. I took my lessons every day, and I told you what I did. They had their way, and I always supplemented it with what I wanted to learn. So I would only let them go through half the lesson, and then I would ask things that I wanted to learn. And I learned at a faster rate of speed of everybody else. And maybe I didn't learn, the more advanced concepts, but I was learning what I needed to learn. I knew what I needed to say every day because I was in relationship with people and I had a job to do. So that's the things I ask about, and I learned how to say that.
And just real briefly, what was your job in Thailand? Like, what was your role as a
I
missionary?
was the deputy superintendent of Grace International School.
Oh, okay.
So I was an administrator in the school.
Okay.
And then after school, I taught electronics and guitar and orchestra
Okay.
and stuff like that,
very
singing,
good.
how to lead singing.
Oh, wow.
So that was all fun. But my main job was, and for my main job, I dealt in English every day.
Yeah.
So I didn't even need Thai. And that's why they wouldn't give me lessons. They said, you don't need Thai. You can do what you want in English. Well, fine.
So
but-
why did you, if your whole purpose for being in Thailand wasn't really to Thai people, wasn't really across
I know, but
languages,
it's
why
all-
did you feel like it was so important to learn language?
Well, because you're in Thailand and all the people that you have an influence on that are not Christians that you meet every day they're Thai people. So how can you be in a country and not have plus it's more convenient to order food and have conversations with people. I mean,
Okay.
I don't want to be helpless.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much, Don.
All right, you're welcome.